So as you already know, communication is truly at the core of effective people management. And so that's why today I thought it might be helpful for you if I shared some of my observations where I feel like managers make some mistakes or some trip ups when it comes to effectively communicating with their team members, as well as share with you some of my tips for overcoming that. So if that sounds like something that's interesting for you, then definitely tap on that like and subscribe button and let's get started. Hey there, friend, welcome back to the channel. And if you're new around here, well, my name is Mac and I'm a leadership coach, but I actually work specifically with first-time team managers and helping them to become effective leaders. So today, like I said, I want to talk about communication because of the fact that it is core and fundamental to truly being an effective leader, and also paired with that because of the fact that it's a struggle for so many of us. You know, I know that it's a struggle for new managers that I work with on the regular, as well as very experienced and executive level managers that I also work with on the regular. You know, both struggle with this. And so I thought I would talk about some of the common places that we all kind of trip up in and kind of my tips to help you get through it. So let's just dive right into this. And I will say that I'm going to share quite a few tidbits in this video. So if you normally don't have a pen and paper, if you're watching me, definitely grab one because I'm going to be walking you through a couple of things that I think will really help you just up level in your communication. So the first kind of like trap that a lot of people fall into is being heavily reliant on asynchronous communication. Right? So as you already know, asynchronous communication is communication that's not necessarily happening in real-time conversation, right? So the replies are delayed. And so this could be like text-based or message-based, email, etc. That's all asynchronous communication. And what I've noticed is a lot of managers rely way too much on this, especially for my conflict-adverse managers out there that would much rather sit behind an email and send a team member something rather than having the conversation knee to knee, which is probably much better for the situation. And the second thing that makes this one such a challenge for a lot of us is that a lot of us grew up in this age of like social media and text-based communication. As someone who is a millennial myself, like all I do all day is like text message my friends instead of picking up the phone and calling them. So I get it. It's so much easier to just text somebody, right? Without nonverbal communication, it is so hard to truly understand someone because of the fact that it's missing tone, it's missing context, it's missing body language, which of course, as we know, is scaffolding for proper communication, yet we rely on it all the time. Now, I think the reason why we're able to kind of get away with text-based communication with our friends and family is because we know them really well. We kind of like already can see their body language and like hear their tone when we're talking to them. But even that can be a little bit dangerous. I mean, just the other day, I was like text messaging my best friend who I've known literally since I was 5. And I said something to her. And then after I read it and I thought, oh, I think I might need to explain this a little bit more and give her more context. And this is with someone that I've literally known since I was 5 years old. I felt compelled to give her that extra like little seasoning in the message. And so I think it's really important when we're dealing with people that we don't really know that well. I mean, maybe you know your team members really well, but I think for the most part, we don't know them on an intimate level like we do our family and friends. And so we need to give a little bit more attention to asynchronous communication when we are choosing to use it. So a couple things here that I want you to think about when it comes to utilizing asynchronous communication. And this is the part that I want you to like pull out your pen and paper for. I want you to ask yourself before like choosing this method of communication, asynchronous communication, I want you to ask yourself the following questions. Number 1, what's the urgency of this message? Number 2, what's the complexity of this message? Number 3, what's my relationship like with the people that I'll be communicating with? And number 4, will the outcome of this message require body language and tone? Those are the 4 questions I really do want you to actually think about before you just rush into utilizing that mode of communication when maybe another mode of communication is much better suited for what you're trying to get across. So the second kind of challenge that a lot of people experience when it comes to communication is engaging in what I like to call drive-by communication. It's so fast, it's like, did that really even happen? That's what I like to call drive-by communication. And I think we've all kind of either engaged in it or we've had it done to us where, you know, someone is telling us something of importance on the way to something else, or they tell us something of importance in the middle of another topic, or maybe we have told someone something without giving them the proper context or the necessary information that they need in order to make a decision, in order to take action on whatever it is that we've just told them. This type of drive-by communication, I think, happens in really quick environments where things are happening so quickly. It's like information is being thrown at you without giving you like the proper context or necessary information that you need in order to do anything with it. And so here's the thing I want to tell you, like it's so harmful to do that to somebody because of the fact that without, like I said, that necessary information, it makes it so that your message is unclear, and it can cause even conflict and frustration because of the fact that the person who's receiving the message doesn't have like the full and necessary information to do something with what you've said. So it causes them frustration, but also it causes you frustration because of the fact that you're sitting there like, I don't understand what was so hard about what I just said. You know what I mean? So we do not want to, like as a rule of thumb, we do not want to be engaging in any sort of drive-by communication with anybody. It is so harmful. So here is something that I found to be incredibly helpful to me when it came to really making sure that my communication was clear and that it was succinct and exactly what that person needed as much as possible, right? Because I mean, nobody's communication is absolutely perfect, but this is what I used to help me make sure that at least I was trying the best that I could not to engage in this type of drive-by really frustrating communication with people. So this is another point where you'll need your piece of paper. So what I want you to do is actually just bucket out your communication into a couple of chunks. Okay, so you want to think to yourself, and here are a couple of questions I want you to ask yourself. Number one, what are the common types of communications within our team? Number two, how do I want to convey important and urgent communications? Number three, how will I communicate routine communications? Number four, how will I communicate contextual information? Number five, how will I communicate FYIs or decisions? And number six, what is the frequency of my communication? So what I find helpful about like asking myself those questions and then bucketing out my communications is that it gives me kind of a mental model to work within. Because here's the thing, when information is coming at you as a manager really quickly, you want to be able to like channel out that information to your team in a quick manner, but it needs to be proper, right? And I know that a lot of like communication gurus will tell you that you should really plan out your communications. And that is really good advice. It's just that when things are moving quickly, that is not so realistic. Let's be real. So what I found to be incredibly helpful is having like a mental model or mental framework to work within ahead of time so that I knew immediately, okay, so this is a common type of communication that I usually have with my team. And so when I hear this from like an executive and I need to relay that information to the team, I'm going to use this mode and this is how I'm going to say it, right? Because I already had it planned out. So it makes my kind of prep time, it cuts my prep time in half because I'm already working within a framework. I'm already working within a mental model to help me ensure that my message is clear. Know what I mean? So that's why I'm encouraging you to really think through those questions and then bucket out your communications as well as like how you're going to communicate those buckets of communication so that it's always super clear. Speaking of which, if you like to work in frameworks, if frameworks are your thing, you'll definitely want to check out the new Manager Accelerator program, because in my program, I help all of our team managers work within frameworks like this to ensure that most definitely their communication is clear. So if you want a little bit more on that, definitely check out the link in the description box below to see if the Accelerator program would be a good fit for you and your goals as well. So the next kind of communication challenge that a lot of us struggle with as managers is only communicating when something goes wrong. So a lot of us fall into this like mistake or trap because of the fact that like, honestly, when things are going well, sometimes it's like, what are we to talk about? What is there to talk about, right? But this is so wrong because we should also be communicating when things are going really great. You know, I got called out on this many a times because I was guilty of this. I think the number one thing I was guilty of when it came to communicating was only communicating when things were wrong. It was really bad. But that is definitely what I did, especially when I moved into senior leadership. Like I didn't hear a lot of complaints about this portion of my communication until I moved into senior leadership. When I was in frontline, I didn't hear those complaints. But I know that a lot of people, like a lot of the frontline team members used to complain to their managers who were my direct reports that I was the type of person that would like only come to their team meetings and have something to say if something was wrong, and that I did not necessarily communicate or highlight when they were doing things that were right. And it was true. And when I sat back and really like reflected on why I did that, not that it's an excuse, but I'm a huge person and trying to figure out like, why did I do this? What's causing me to do this? And when I thought about what was causing it, I noticed that it was because of the fact that I'm a huge like problem solver. Like I'm always trying to think about like, how do we solution this? So at the top of my mind all the time are the problems. That's all I'm ever seeing. I'm not saying that I don't appreciate the hard work and effort people put into solving problems, but once the problem's solved, I'm like, all right, what's the next thing? And so I really had to adjust my mindset on that and hold on to this aspect of being a problem solver, because I think that that's such a vital skill, but also recognize that I need to communicate and close the loop when problems are actually solved, so that people recognize that I truly do care about the effort and their skill set and all the things that they're bringing to the table in order to solve the problems that I've surfaced. So if you are kind of similar, where you are often seeing the problems and so you're moving on to like the next thing and the next thing and the next thing before like closing the loop and just thanking people for what they've done, you'll definitely want to remember to close the loop, because that is definitely one of the things that really frustrates people. And I totally understand why they were frustrated by it, but I'm just letting you know that's definitely something that can make it so that your communication is unclear. So the fourth thing that I've noticed that causes a huge challenge for effective and clear communication is that managers are overly concerned about what other people are thinking, which actually ends up making their communication unclear. So interesting how that happens. So I think I've told you guys in the past that my mentor and manager was actually a colonel in the Air Force, right? And I remember at one of our mentorship sessions when we were talking, he was relaying a story to me where I think he was talking about the student pilots. That's what it was. He was talking about the student pilots and how, during their simulations, they had their checklists like basically memorized. They knew exactly what to do. But as soon as they got into like the actual plane and they were sitting next to someone that had like substantial authority, they would like forget how to do things. Like they would forget how all of a sudden how to put their landing gear down, all these things that they absolutely knew in their bones when they were just sitting in the office, right? And he said to me, the moral of the story, Mac, because he always was telling me stories, and then he would like wrap around and give me the moral of the story. And so he said, the moral of the story is that it is pretty much impossible for you to fly a plane effectively if you're constantly thinking about what the other person is thinking. And so he said, for you in your role as a manager, it's going to be virtually impossible for you to truly and effectively lead this team to the best of your capacity if you're constantly worried about what other people are thinking. And I remember, again, sitting and just reflecting with that and thinking, yeah, he's absolutely right. So I want to ask you now, as a reflection point, right? When you are engaging in these important communications, right? Whether it be with your team or upper management or whatever, what are you thinking about in that instance? Like, are you thinking about what you're communicating and the best outcome for that message? Or are you thinking about how confident you sound, if you sound articulate, if you sound smart? Like, what are you actually thinking about? Because I guarantee you, if you're thinking about all those other things, like what you sound like, then it's probably very true that you're probably not giving that message the best of the best that you could. So yes, I want you to have an adequate level of care for the way that you sound, most definitely, because I do recognize that that has quite a bit of bearing on the way that your message is received. But I want you to have more care for what you're actually saying than the way that it sounds. Because I know that there are a lot of gurus, again, and a lot of people out here that are just talking about how you can sound like a leader and how to have executive presence and how to sound confident and how to sound articulate without really getting to the crux of the matter, which is your message. and your message is most important. Because let me tell you, if I cared a whole lot about how I sounded and whether or not I was articulate or whether or not I sounded like a leader, I would not be doing these YouTube videos today. I just wouldn't be. I would be more wrapped up in my head about how I sound because I've never been that much of a confident communicator, and not so much like thinking about the impact it's going to have on people. So what I ground myself in all the time is the impact and not necessarily about how articulate I am. I mean, yes, I care and I try really hard to make sure that my message is clear so that you guys are like taking from this, but I can't like concern myself too much about whether or not I have executive presence and whether or not I sound like confident and all that stuff, because what I truly care about is that what I say, my message, hits you, and that it encourages you, and that it inspires you to make a change. That is what is important to me. And so I have a lot of thoughts about this in terms of how to just like focus in on your communication in terms of like on what's most important. And so if that's something that you would like to learn more about, like if that's a topic that you're interested in, definitely leave a comment in the comment section below, and I can definitely expand on my thoughts on that, because like I said, I've seen some videos just floating around on YouTube that really kind of irk me because I feel like it's not focusing on the right thing. So if you want to hear my thoughts on that as well as like how I do it, definitely let me know in the comment section below. Okay, so that is it for today's video in terms of, like I said, the 4 places where communication can get a little bit icky and kind of my tips on how to deal with that. I hope you had your pen and paper, like I said, throughout it, because I did share quite a few questions I wanted you to reflect on that will then help you build out some frameworks for yourself in order to like effectively communicate better with your team. All right, if you enjoyed this video, definitely do give it a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe if you have not subscribed, because I share videos that are super helpful, I believe anyways, for team managers every single week on this channel, and I would not want you to miss any of it. All right, my friend, thank you so much for being here with me this week. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your week, and I'll see you in the next one.